Okay, so student feedback, there's no student services involved. Mid-course student feedback to improve teaching effectiveness. What is this about? We are going to be talking about actually using surveys in an online class to get formative student feedback at a critical moment in the course. So
if you guys would like access to the presentation, we're going to put this slide up at the end, but there's a tiny URL that you can use to access the presentation as well as a QR code.
And I'm Susan Coe, and I teach in East Asian Studies and Chinese Civilization in the History Department, and work in the Office of Online Education with faculty.
I'm Elisa Siddiq. I'm the Educational Technologist and Instructional Designer in the Office of Online Ed here at Lehman.
So, what is the value of getting feedback early? Well, you know, this really has a long history in studies of teaching and learning. Those of you who are involved in faculty development know that this is a very important idea. And you know, the idea is that you're getting student feedback. You should have at least some idea that you might make a change or you might make a response. And I don't mean change the course content necessarily, but you'll see what I'm talking about, what kinds of changes you might be able to make. This has been used for years in face-to-face courses, but it's even more valuable in an online course because a lot is going on in an online course that you may assume you know and you're reading between the lines, and you may be wrong. And you can't have the students sitting in front of you as you're sitting in front of me here now, and I can see people who are looking doubtful or people who are looking, yeah, right. So, you know, just being able to get those cues from people quickly looks in comprehension. Yes, you can intuit a lot from the way people respond, but you may not understand what's helping them most in the course. What do they maybe need more of? And what are some of the challenges that you may not even be aware of? Showing concern for student progress. This is another very important, this is a whole psychological element in getting feedback from students. The whole idea of it as being a part of the integration of teaching and learning and involving students in their learning. And I mean, again, you know, there's a big psychological element here. And I mean, there's nobody who doesn't want to be able to give feedback about how they're receiving something, right? So some of the reasons that you might have, you know, looking at what is the relative effectiveness of some aspect of the course. How is this working? It's particularly important when you know, have introduced something new. I don't know about you, but when I introduce a new element in the course, I really want to get a good sense of how it's being received and how well it is being integrated. And maybe I need to make some changes next time out, you know, or within the course. Suggestions to students on the kind of support they might need. So you can ask students if they, for example, if they need more instructor commentary. You know, would they like, are there certain topics that they felt they needed more guidance? Or additional resources. The whole idea of self-perceived learning. Having students actually reflect on what's going on. You know, it's an old trick. Those of you in the schools of education, this is something that we ask students to do. We are often mistaken about students' perceptions of their own learning and even their preferences. And I think this is very important in technology, ed tech, when you have technology in courses. I think we always make assumptions that all the younger students are all really tech savvy, or even that they, you know, the fact that they know how to manipulate a device doesn't mean that they are necessarily good at reading online or analyzing or communicating in different ways. And so you can make a lot of assumptions about this, including such things as they must hate the textbook because everybody hates the textbook. Well, that's interesting, but not always true. So the timing and format has to be early enough to allow change. Now, when I say change, I don't mean, I know people are a little horrified when I think about changing an entire, changing some element in the online course, because then everybody's going to get off base. By change, I mean such things as providing additional commentary, providing additional support, providing better instructions. There can be things like that. So, in a 15-week semester, I think ideal, the sweet spot is sort of between 4 and 6 weeks in. Now, it may differ in a particular class, but usually you need enough time to get the students to have sampled all the different kinds of activities that you're going to be doing, get a sense of the book, the style of the text, the OER, whatever you're using, the different materials. It should be as brief as possible and anonymous to encourage participation. I don't think I need to explain that all that much, because if it's not brief, you have to tell them it's brief, even if it's longer than maybe brief. But you say it's brief because that way people will take it. Students are always afraid of giving their opinion in the middle of a course, so it should be clear that it's that the response is going to be anonymous. You can combine different kinds of questions with definitely some open-ended questions, at least one open-ended question where you can just say, do you have any suggestions of what could help support your learning in this course going forward? The old thing of those in faculty development know the muddiest point. So that's, asking students what was the most unclear. Well, you can also say, what has helped? What helped you most? And what suggestions they might have. And again, ways in which they want the instructor to support them. When you introduce a survey, you do need to explain why you're doing it. That will help the participation. If students know that there's something in it for them, that you're going to, read and respond. So then after the survey, it's very important that you thank the students for participating and you provide some observations of the results to students to show that you actually looked at what they said and any action that you are going to be taking in response. And sometimes if you see there's been some misunderstanding about, let's say, how the online course works in terms of when the instructor is giving feedback or what kind of feedback, that's also part of your action is to actually explain to the students, I want to clear up this issue that I see that nobody seemed to have posted a question about, but I see it appearing in the results of this survey. Now you can combine that survey data with data from your other assessments or the student comments or even the access info in Blackboard to fill out a picture. So if you're getting a comment about not understanding the text, then you might want to check, okay, when they're answering the discussion questions, does it appear that they understand the text? Or what are the ways in which they haven't understood the text? What's the difficulty? So, you have a lot of, and when I say data, I don't mean just going like behind the scenes and getting data. I mean information. So there's a lot of sources of information in an online class that you can kind of put together to fill out that picture. And you can then repeat the same or similar survey at the end of the course to confirm your results. So for example, if there was difficult material, but you had feeling that students were getting better at grasping that material by the end of the course, which you would hope they would, that is one way you can get a confirmation. Or if the latter part of the course had some special projects or assignments, you may want to ask a question to get the data on that. I did a trial in my 2 online history courses, East Asia and the Modern World and Chinese Civilization. I explained the reasons for the survey, that I wanted to know how they were doing, how are things going, and that I wanted to find out if there was anything that I could do to, support their learning. I basically said that. I had them rank the course materials and activities in regard to how helpful those were to their learning. Then I asked them to, it was different in the two classes, but they explained why they ranked the highest and lowest as they did. I think in the first class I just asked them to explain for the ones that they ranked low, to explain why. And I posted the survey in Blackboard in the 5th week. I gave them a week to complete it, and then I repeated it around, I think, week 13 or 14 of the course. And then I gave feedback on the survey and the actions that I was going to take. So this just is showing the question. This was for the fall class. Please rank these learning activities in the order of which of that which has contributed most, number 1, to your learning experience in this course, that which has contributed least, number 6. So I had the text. I had a lot of different, I did have a hard copy textbook, but then I also had a lot of OERs, the weekly discussions, the quizzes. I had open book quizzes, the videos, and the actual assignment that had been due in week 4, because I wanted to get feedback on that. That was an assignment that I had 3 more of the same type. And then here's where I said, those that you rate as contributing less to your learning, provide an explanation about how it was that activity made it less valuable. For example, and I give an example, if you selected the text as number 4 on your list, you might explain there was too much reading for each week or too difficult to understand. So I tried to give them even an example. As you know, sometimes students are not sure how to express what it is that they're concerned about. And I did ask a question concerning instructor feedback. Please let me know if you have any comments or suggestions on the feedback and commentary that is provided by the instructors through the weekly discussion posting, a short video I had made, and the feedback you receive along with your scores in my grades or in announcements. So I wanted to know about all these different ways that I was providing feedback. And I really got some interesting commentary from the students on that. That was very helpful to me. I had a very good response. I mean, I say for an online survey when more than half of the students took the survey, that's pretty good. Maybe that's low for some people, but for online surveys, that's really good. I was very surprised because the students actually rated the textbook and the primary source analysis assignments very highly. And I mean, that pleased me. I was kind of surprised that I just thought they were going to be much more fond of the multimedia, the videos, and whatever. But actually, many of them said that the textbook, having the textbook, helped them really get a better grasp of the history. And for those of you who study, history in East Asia, it's pretty complex. And some of them said they wanted more explanations on some of the topics. So I did that by adding commentary in each of the discussion forums, highlighting, what people were talking about and kind of responding. And this was this is an excerpt from my acknowledgement after the survey. Thanks to all contributed, the results show blah, 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 blah. And I'm basically highlighting a response. This is a change. It's not really a change, but I'm clarifying the purpose of the discussion area. And that is also where I'm most likely to weigh in to correct, question, or reinforce concepts. This is similar to what I'd be doing if I were standing in front of you in a classroom on campus. And then suggestions, I'll try to do this, blah, blah, blah. And thank you again for your feedback on the course. So for those of you who look at that QR thing, you can, I think you can get the slides. This is some of the literature on the topic. I think it's really very well established. There's not as much as using this for online, but there is some about online as well.
Okay, so we're going to briefly look at 3 tools for conducting and creating mid-course surveys. We're going to look at Blackboard surveys, Microsoft Forms, and Google Forms. So Susan actually used Blackboard surveys to create hers and deploy her surveys in Blackboard. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Blackboard surveys, but you can find them in your course tools under the test tool and survey section. You create survey questions very similar to how you create tests in Blackboard. So if you've done creation of test questions in Blackboard, it's the same process. These surveys can be anonymous, and like Susan mentioned, you want them to be anonymous in order to encourage participation. In your grade center, it actually gives you a little check mark. It doesn't give you like that needs graded icon. It says a check mark for those students that have completed the survey. You won't see what their individual response is in terms of assigning it to names, but you'll know who's done it. You can access the results from the grade center. So I've attached a little bit of an instruction because that's one of the limitations of using the Blackboard survey is that the results can be downloaded into a text file or a CSV file, but when it opens up, it's not very visually appealing. For some of you, it might look like garbled mess, but in our instructions that we've provided, we've shown faculty how to take that and import it properly into a Microsoft Excel file so that it makes sense to the viewer and for analysis.
And those Blackboard user guides are so bad, and Lisa has made a big improvement. So if any of your faculty are having trouble with this, I recommend Lisa's guide.
Then we have Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft is free for CUNY employees. If you don't know that, you can visit the Microsoft Office 365 for Education. So once you're employed by CUNY, you get their cloud version. As well, you can download onto your desktop. You can create forms with various question types, such as multiple choice, fill-ins, ranking, similar to what Susan was describing in her survey. These can be anonymous once you don't include a name field within your form. And you will post the link into your Blackboard course or your learning management system that you're using. The results can be downloaded into an Excel spreadsheet for analysis. And it's a little more visually appealing and easy to interpret because on top of the spreadsheet, you can also look at the results section, which gives you like graphs, like pie charts and bar charts and all of these different charts that if you're doing a presentation, you can grab those responses and put them in. A limitation of this is that it's not built into Blackboard. So you would have to link into it. So you would have to post a link there. And it does not enable collaboration and sharing easily right now because of the way our system is set up. So let's say I have a couple of instructors sending or working on the same survey. So if you're teaching a section or a course that has multiple sections, it doesn't let you do the back and forth collaboration. So if I want to add a question and you want to add one. And last but not least, we have Google Forms. These are free. And again, it supports multiple question types. And it can be anonymous, and you would have to also post a link into Blackboard. The results can be downloaded to a Google Sheet, but just like Microsoft Office Forms, you do have the option of getting these beautiful graphics of pie charts and bar charts that have your responses there. Again, it's outside of Blackboard. It's not institutionally supported. So what that means is that it's on CUNY campuses. You cannot be supported here, but it's fairly easy to use. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of the tools. So some questions for discussions. Do any of you already use mid-course surveys in your class, and if so, for what purpose? What type of questions do you ask? And what are the tools you use to deliver your survey? And are there other methods you use to gather formative student feedback? Not the end of survey, the survey the students complete at the end for course evaluation. And if you have any general questions.
So on my midterm, I have for extra credit, maybe a point per question. what was your, what topic did you find most difficult? What did you like and explain why? And what topic did you enjoy the most? And, you know, those kinds of questions. So I usually have about 5 questions, and they would just write it out and hand it in, or type it and hand it in. And I always find it very helpful.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, and I usually do, throughout the course, I do end of chapter feedback surveys and midterm surveys. But I try to stay away from the rankings and go more towards things that are like, what did you feel about the exam? Was it fair, challenging? Were you prepared? Were you prepared for the material? Did the instructor, was he clear? Confusing, things like that.
And these are all anonymous, I assume.
They're actually not anonymous.
Oh. And how does
Because and I do get the students actually quite clear, and sometimes they're even two, because there's a comment field, and sometimes there's two poignant in their response. But I want them to know that you know, the point that you brought up, the fact that it's a way to begin a communication with them. So that is one of the reasons that I want them to know that.
I should just make one comment. You know, one of the reasons that I had this ranking question was both of these courses, the fall and the spring, were brand new courses, online courses. And I had put together all this material from different sources and different activities. So I was very interested to know, you know, how they were perceiving these things as helping them in their learning. So that was, you know, a specific reason that I had for
and I would
asking
like,
that.
and actually I would like to see some of your questions, maybe. I wouldn't mind incorporating them to see how it works.
Yeah, I've been also using mid-semester surveys, and one thing that I want to know is what they want to learn, specific things like particular projects that they want to develop. So it's more about like one-on-one, like getting to know what their particular interests are. And that's very helpful as well. Also like ranking how helpful was this or that, all the activities. But at the end, talk about their particular interest.
Yeah, I mean, that, you know, I think there can be many goals that you could have or purposes that you as an instructor can have for conducting these surveys. And you might have different purposes at different intervals in the semester.
And I give them credit for
You give them credit for it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
a little bit. But,
Any other questions, comments?
Where do you, if you use the Blackboard survey, where do you embed that? So do you embed that, for example, in a weekly unit? Do you put it on the top of the list of your units? Because that's one question I've been thinking about, is in a way to get students to be more likely to click on it rather than be like, oh, I'm doing my work right now, I'm not going to bother. But I'm not sure where.
Well, I mean, I embed it in the module, but then I announce it. In fact, I make it appear. It's, you know, I make it appear at a certain time, and then I make an announcement, which is emailed to everybody, and then I look to see, because I give them a week to do it, and I look about midweek to see who has done it, because most people will take a survey immediately. If they delay, they often do not do it. That's true. So I send a reminder and explain, you know, why I really would love to have more people participate. And that usually brings in some additional people. So that's how I do it. I think there's many different ways you could do it, especially if you're doing a hybrid class.
I also do start you mid or at the end of the semester, and it's a graded assignment. It's still anonymous, but then I create another column in Grade Center that, and it's a pass fail. they either get an easy
Uh-huh.
A or they get a F. And it's very, very low stakes, but I get 100% of
Oh, that's great, yeah.
answering it.
I always include that question, what do you feel has hindered your learning? And I find it's so interesting to see their answers because it's very rare that they actually point to something in the course, at least that I've seen. And they often reflect on their own study habits. So I think that's a very useful sort of little tweak for them.
Right, I mean, I don't say hinder, or you know, I say help more or less helps, you know. Because I think some students actually are worried about being too negative.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you do find out interesting things. I mean, you know, I was curious, whenever you have a text, you always wonder how many people find it easy to read, how many people had difficulty getting through it. And so it's always interesting to see that, you know, if you have even two people in a class of 22 who had difficulty with the reading, you know, there are things that you can do. Encourage questions, provide a little more commentary or explanation. So I think it's really helpful to know those things.
Any other questions, comments?
Comment, what I do even for online classes, even though it sounds contradictory, I give them a paper survey. At the very end, with the exam, I set aside 10 minutes at the end, I give them a paper survey just to make sure that it's 100% response. So one by one, I say, would you mind answering these questions? So I get 100% participation. It's anonymous. So.
Well, I will say this, you know, if you ask something, you know, like anywhere between week 14 or 13 and 15, I did distinguish. I made it really clear this is not the Lehman official SETL, right? The student evaluation. Just so they realize this is not the same. And of course, you don't want to confuse them about that.
Yeah, also, I think it's good to have the mid-semester because it really separates like the final evaluation from CUNY.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
totally apart.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had things that were unique at the second half of the semester, so I wanted to capture that. But also, I really wanted to confirm, did they say the same thing? You know, is the person who, somebody, you know, if there were two people who said the text, you know, I found the text really difficult to read, and at the end, that didn't seem to be the case, well, that was interesting. So, you know, there are many things that you can get confirmation on. Because, of course, you know, learning goes on during the course. You hope that people are able to master certain kinds of assignments better. Right. Oh, yeah.
So this is our contact information, again, if anyone's interested. And also, one more.
Right.
This is the QR code and the URL to the presentation if you would like to click on any of the live links to get more resources.
Okay, well, thank you.